Faye Knowles and her 3 sons claim an orange blob picked their car up off the highway. They fled in terror into the scrub until the object disappeared.
For the Knowles family, it was to have been a routine drive across the Nullarbor. That all changed as the family approached the town of Mundrabilla on the Air Highway. They claim that's when they had their unexpected and terrifying encounter with the unknown.
The car was shaking. I went down the window and I said it's on top of the roof. And all this, I don't know what it was, it all come inside the car like smoke. We thought we were all dead.
And I went down my window and Mum said there's something on the roof. And I said, no, come off it, you know, you've got to be joking. And she went down her window and she put her hand on the roof and she goes, my God. She goes, what is it? And no, I swear to God, I'm not lying. I swear to God, I opened up my window and the car started going out of control. And all this smoke, and it was like smoke. I'm not lying. It was like smoke. And gases all started coming to the car. And me and my brother started to go crazy, you know. I thought I was going in my head. Felt like my brain was getting sucked out.
Another motorist and a truck driver also witnessed the incident. They confirm the Knowles family story. Police are investigating the claim. They say the car did have dents on the roof and an ash substance inside. Late today, the Knowles family returned to the scene of their experience for the last time.
And you won't travel that stretch of road again?
No way. You
don't even wish to travel in your own car?
No.
Rod Stephen, 7 News.
Now, you won't get an argument from Carol Forrester. Just months before, she had her own terrifying run-in with a flying saucer.
It was all of a sudden the level of the windshield of the car, covering the roadbed. I could see the landing gear. That was very much the most frightening moment because it wasn't beside me anymore. It was trying to stop me. And that was very frightening. I'm just surprised I reacted as quickly as I did.
You feared for your life and your children's life.
Yes,
at that point.
Very much so. How do you know what was going to happen? How do you know what they wanted? You don't.
From your experience that night 15 years ago, you sensed that there was some intelligent being or beings in that craft.
Oh, yes, there had to be. I saw what I saw. I know I did. And I know, after 15 years now, I know there's people that are not going to believe me. And I can't help that. But I'm an honest person, and I'm telling the truth, and I'm not going to hide it any longer.
13 years ago, March 2nd, 1975, I was 8 months pregnant. I had my 3 small children, 4, 5, and 8, in a car. I was leaving my parents' home. My husband wasn't with me. He was snowmobiling with friends, which I couldn't do at that time. As I came out of the driveway from my parents' home, I noticed to the west there was a bright star, lower than a star usually is, but we watched it. I drove 12 miles home, and no matter which direction I went, the star was positioned in my driver's window, lower than a star. When I turned straight west to take the last 3 miles home, it seemed to be coming lower. At that point, it was straight in front of me. It no longer was in the driver's window.
Was it still just a bright star, or could you
It was still a bright star, but it seemed to be descending. But I thought maybe it was an optical illusion at the time. We went over this little knoll, and the children started screaming that they thought the star was coming down out of the sky. And I almost stopped at the first farmer's driveway, and I thought, no, what am I going to tell him? There's a star coming down out of the sky. I thought I'd just keep going. So I kept going on down the road. Roger's mother lives in a farm home to the left. I almost stopped there again, but I didn't. We could tell that it was getting lower. I passed that driveway. A little ways up the road, there was a road to the right. Then there was a long stretch of nothing, no farm homes, nothing. Just as I passed that road, this ship came down like a shot, just like a shot. All of a sudden, there it was in front of me. It was the level of the windshield. I saw the landing gear. It wasn't like an airplane's landing gear. It was flat.
We have a sketch of what it was.
Yes. There was windows across the entire center of this ship or whatever it was. It looked like something really out of a comic book, like 2 cereal bowls together. Of course, I only looked at it for a couple seconds because I was terrified. My 3 children were just screaming. I didn't hear any sound from the ship, but I don't think I would have anyway. They were screaming. And somehow, automatically, I shifted the car into reverse and threw open my door because it was dark and I knew that I wouldn't be able to see to back up, headed for Roger's mother's driveway and some help. Then my oldest daughter, who was 8, started screaming that it was coming at us. I glanced back and it was darting toward us, just small darts. So I laid on my horn while I was driving backwards. Then I asked Mary about it afterwards because I could tell I was getting light and dark all at the same time. She said...
Mary, your child?
She's the daughter, 8. She said it seemed then like it was one huge light bulb and it kept flashing on and off. My children were terrified, and for this reason I haven't said anything hardly at all for 13 years. News reporters and everyone have come and I've turned them away. Once in a great while I'll talk to someone. But my oldest daughter will be 22 in a couple months, and when she heard I was coming today, she said, "Mom, don't tell them my married name." They were frightened. At night, I turned on all the lights in the house. For weeks, they slept in the living room. She had a room of her own, and she didn't want it anymore. If they had to go out to the kitchen for a lunch or to the bathroom, one of us had to go with them. I couldn't get them to go out of the house at night. And I didn't call anyone and report it because I thought they would tell me I was crazy.
It was a flying object. It was oval-shaped, and to me it looked flat on the bottom. It was something I'd never seen before, and my car did quit running on the highway, and coming back from Lubbock is what caused me to notice it.
I see. Did you actually see the object itself?
Yes, sir, I did.
And could you give us approximately the size of the thing, or was it a massive, or was it just a light, or what happened exactly?
Well, no, sir, it looked solid to me. I mean, it did have a definite shape. It was kind of egg-shaped, was flat on the bottom, and it was luminous, bright.
And about how long did it stay where you were?
Oh, 3-4 minutes, something like that.
And when it took off, did it also travel straight up?
Well, almost straight up.
And at very high speed.
Folks in Level Land, Texas are worried about strange objects in their neighborhood. Sheriff Weir Clem says he has received several reports of a strange egg-shaped object about 200 feet long landing on farms and highways last night in the vicinity of Level Land. Sheriff Clem says he even himself got a glimpse of the thing, which somehow turned off lights and auto engines when it came near. The sheriff says that lights and engines worked fine again after the thing went away.
What we had was a 1205, which was at about 9 miles north of Levelland on the Highway 51. Was reported by Mr. Williams from Kermit, Texas, that the object was in the road when he drove up. And as he approached the object, why, the closer he got to it, when he got so close, why, it seems though his car stalled it. His motor died, and when the object began to move upward, why, his lights went out.
In other words, the two independent reports were approximately the same at around the same time in the evening.
Yeah.
The light was coming at me. It was extremely bright. The inside of the car lit up. I can remember that. And it was a very dazzling, brilliant appearance.
His story is that while driving along a country road on night patrol, he saw a light in the far distance. After he'd been watching it for a while, it started moving towards him. He maintains that he blacked out, and when he came to, his car had been thrown across the road. Later examination revealed that the car itself had been damaged. A dented top, smashed headlights, shattered windshield, and a bent antenna.
Something did strike my vehicle. Something didn't want me there, apparently, or it was, I can't put a judgment on it. I really don't know how to classify it. I can't classify it as an attack. Perhaps it was an escape.
Well, I was driving the Panda car along Burnley Road in Todmorden, and I came across this strange craft blocking the road.
Describe it to me.
Well, it was about 20 feet high, about 14 feet wide. It was a diamond-shaped object, hovering about 5 feet off the ground.
Now, at this point, you didn't see anybody, did you?
No, I didn't see anything other than that.
Did you approach it?
I got within about 20 feet of it.
And then you went back to your car to report it, did you?
No, I didn't get out of the car.
Ah.
I didn't want to get out of the car.
You didn't?
No.
But you got on the blur, did you?
I got on the radio, both radios, the VHF in the car, and the UHF personal radio that we carry.
Yeah.
And I got no response at all.
They didn't work?
No.
Was that unusual?
Not in that particular area. There are black spots in the area. But the radios have worked there since.
And then you left the scene, did you?
The next thing I remember was I was at the other side of where the object had been, driving the car.
Away?
Away.
Did you report it when you got back?
I certainly did.
They thought you were crackers, presumably.
Yeah, they did.
Now then, as a result of hypnosis, a lot of that story has been filled in, hasn't it? Now, what do you recollect from the result of the hypnosis?
Well, as I say, I have no conscious memory of what I said under hypnosis. The only thing I can go off is the hypnotic regressions were videotaped.
Yeah.
And I think there was about 3 or 4 tapes done. And when I actually was allowed to see them at the end of the session, it was quite frightening.
What you'd said under hypnosis?
Mm.
So tell me the other story now, the one that they drew out under hypnosis.
Well, under hypnosis, when I see the craft itself, as I said before, I didn't get out of the car consciously. I find myself getting out of the car, and for some reason, I have no idea why, a strange, very powerful beam of light is shone towards me, which blinds me. I jump back in the car in panic, and then there is some sort of a blackout. And after the blackout, I wake up in some sort of an examination room.
I see. So, this spaceship, or whatever it is, did you see that in your recollected...
Yes, everything under hypnotic regression, everything was accurate right up to...
The bit that...
when I got out of the car, yes.
Okay, well, describe this creature to me, this man.
Well, he was a humanoid, or of human appearance. He's about 6 feet high.
But not quite a human being, you said.
Well, he had a human appearance.
Yeah.
He had a beard, and he wore some sort of a skull cap, and he wore like a white gown. He was very pleasant in appearance. He wasn't at all frightening to look at.
Okay, now you've got yourself into this room. What goes on there? Who else is there?
There were, I think I said there was 8 small 3-foot-high creatures that transpilated during the hypnotic regression as robots.
Were you in a normal room, or were you in a spaceship, rather like Doctor Who's time capsule? Were you in something as kind of
it looked bigger than his capsule.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look very big, does it, really?
Yeah.
But inside it, yes, I would say it's very similar.
And then they tried to undress you, didn't they, at one point? Take your shoes and socks off. Why was that?
Well, this is one of the funny things about it. When I got back to the station, I found that my left boot was split, and I had a burn mark on the instep of my left foot. And in the hypnotic regression, they actually examined my left foot. Now, that's remarkable to me, with the other evidence of the other police officers seeing the craft as well.
How did your experience end in this place you were with these people?
The doctor woke me up. We never actually got to an ending.
Yeah.
I was wired up to some heart machines, and they completely went off the scale. I was in such stress that both doctors stopped the hypnotic regressions.
Now tell me, what do you make of it all? Do you believe now in UFOs, or what? Are you convinced that those things actually happen to you, or it's just in your mind somewhere as an imagination or a dream or something like that?
Well, the UFO certainly existed.
You're sure of that?
Yes, it was a nuts and bolts craft. I think I'm quite capable of seeing something from 20 feet.
If I said to you anything you say will be taken down and used in evidence, you would say that you saw that thing?
Yes, I would swear on the Holy Bible. What I saw that day, I've seen nothing of the like except in science fiction films. I saw a UFO. Make no mistake, they do exist. There is nothing on this earth will ever tell me any different.
There was 3 of us. It was night time, and as we rounded a bend in the road, there was these lights in front of us. Now, the lights were very bright, and you could actually see that the object was round or oval, depending on how you were looking at it.
A spaceship thing?
It was a UFO. We had never seen anything like it before. There was 4 very bright white lights, 1 at each compass point, and 2 red lights in the centre. And it was
round?
Yeah, well, round, oval, as I said. If you're looking at it from an angle, it's difficult to say whether it's round or oval. But it was definitely that shape. Vivian, who was driving, tried to speed away from it because we were absolutely terrified.
Yes.
But very excited as well, but absolutely terrified. She put her foot on the accelerator and the car lost power. At which point the object was then in a field next to us, and Valerie and myself were watching it out of the side window. We have no recollection of it going from A to B, from being in the road in front of us to being in the field next to us. That was our conscious memory, seeing the lights, then following it down the road, very, as I said, Vivian desperately trying to get the car to respond to her. And then some way down the road, the lights dimmed as if it was taking a surge of power, and it had gone, and at which point the car picked up speed. Because there was three of us, if there'd only been one, I would never have said anything at all, personally. We'd lost time. The journey actually took longer than it should have done. I remember the shuffling feet under hypnosis. That was a big thing. Similar things to she's described, the 3 to 4 foot things that weren't actually humanoid or anything like that, more like robots. They looked at us, they took us into a room where we were put into some sort of machine.
The beings they're describing are not typical of the most common type in the United States, which tend to be smaller, 3.5 to 4 feet tall, with these huge black eyes.
That's what Vivian saw.
That's what Vivian saw. But there are other types described, like taller, luminous ones, more robotic ones, like she described. We're also seeing more reptilian.
So what conclusions are we drawing from this? If these people aren't hallucinating, if they're not part of some kind of mass psychosis, if they are experiencing something, what's your conjecture?
No, because that's a £64 billion question. I mean,
we can't pay you for answering that.
I mean, I've finally come after thousands of hours. I was told for 2 years, don't say what you think here. Don't say what you think. Just say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, But after a while, the pattern becomes so powerful, so dense that the only thing, no kind of psychiatric illness, not hallucinating, fantasying, some other kind of trauma, none of it begins to work because you have the UFOs, you have the cuts, the scoop marks, the independent witnessing, the people are absent. So some kind of another intelligence seems to be trying to knock on our doors to get through to us.
Something here. I at first thought it was another car, but I looked out towards the back of me and I noticed there was no car in back of me. And I was adjusting the mirror and I noticed an object in the sky. It was flying behind my car and I kept watching it in my rearview mirror. And eventually it went over to where I could see it looking out the window. It kept following me driving down the road. And then I made a right-hand turn to come up onto the road coming up towards my house. And this object made a right-hand turn. And by this point, I was getting really scared.
She drove into the driveway, ran up to the front door, came flying in the house, and said something was following her. And then when she told me it was above her car, I didn't know what she was talking about.
These Swiss witnesses prefer to remain anonymous. Suddenly, in the rearview mirror, I saw a red light about the size of a table tennis ball, which stopped about 1.5 meters from my car. It was about 10 by 15 centimeters across. Suddenly, it started to oscillate from left to right. It moved from the left side of the car and then to the right. Everything was bright red, even inside the car. Then at the height of that rock, you can see up there on the right-hand side of the road, the car rose. Before I lost consciousness, I saw the little red ball flip to the back seat. Then at about 30 meters from that building up there, there was a white glow, and I found myself on the road again. This is a rare case of abduction inside the car itself.
The car began rising into the air, going up with us in it. And after a period of time of this sensation of extreme speed rising upward, being pulled by some force that would not let go, both actually of us found ourselves outside of the car. We were not any longer seeing it. We were in a circular room that was gray, just a nondescript gray. She and I were both standing there. There was a hallway in front of us, and there were several gray aliens that came over and took my hands and began walking me down the hall.
Can you describe the aliens? How high were they? Do they have hands, feet, face?
They do, yes, ma'am. They have very large heads. They're probably about 3.5 to maybe 4 feet tall. The eyes are very dark, slanted, larger than human eyes. The mouth is nothing but a slit. I didn't notice any ears. The nose, to me, all I could see was just a little, tiny little structure. It didn't look like it was really used. They're very thin. They do have 2 arms, 2 legs. The arms are longer than our arms. The hands are very different. The ones I saw had only 4 fingers, basically. One could have been a thumb and 3 fingers. They're longer. They had what appeared to be, to me, a kind of a fleshy pad on the end of the fingertips, almost like a suction pad, like on a frog type of thing. They're very non-human looking.
After we drove a short distance, I glanced out the left-hand window and saw a silver object in the sky that seemed to be pacing us. I pointed it out to my family member who was driving. Neither of us could determine any identifying marks and heard no sound, although our windows were rolled down. We both wanted it to be an airplane, even though it had no wings or tail. I watched the craft for several minutes, and it continued pacing us, sometimes briefly hidden from view behind the large trees. Eventually, I looked away from the object, and when I looked again, it had disappeared. When we arrived home, we realized that we had lost about an hour of time somewhere during the trip. We told other family members of the strange occurrence and even returned to the town shortly afterward, specifically to try to locate the peculiar road we'd been on that day. The missing time plagued us off and on over the intervening years, and finally, after 20 years, I could no longer stand not knowing what had happened to us. I began a concerted effort to locate someone who could help us break through the amnesia of that day. Under separate, independent hypnosis sessions, my family member and I explored the events that had occurred during the hour of missing time. With no knowledge of what the other had recovered under hypnosis, our memories indicated substantive corroboration of an abduction by beings that were anything but human.
A case of a man and woman being involuntarily abducted in a car and all, taken aboard an alien spacecraft. They were alone when their car was. It was about 11:45 at night near Matias Barbosa in Minas Gerais state in Brazil, and it was just short of midnight. They had stopped for a snack back down the road. Is why they were pretty well aware of the time that this happened. And they pulled off the side of the road because they were drowsy, and a light bloomed on above them, a bright beam of white light. And as they were trying to see through the windshield what this light was coming from, there was a whoosh, car, and everything was sucked aboard that fast in this beam of light. Went right through the bottom of the craft, and a floor slid under it, and it's inside.
Grace's experience starts in the early hours of the morning, travelling home with 3 girlfriends. Victoria, who can't be identified, was one of the women in the back seat.
It's when I got a bit further down the hill that I noticed on the right-hand side of me some long oblong-shaped lights. I didn't know what they were. I mean, I only sort of caught a glimpse of a bright orange light sort of shining through. As I got down the hillside and started to come around the corner by this little hotel that takes us back through the back roads towards the freeway, one of the girls in the back noticed a very bright white light with a type of blue haze around it. When the girls were sort of saying, oh, maybe, you know, like it's a UFO, and, you know, was sort of like just laughed it off and said, don't be so ridiculous.
The women continued their trip, but further down the road, more lights appeared.
I heard Victoria and one of the other girls in the back there, they were commenting on something that was behind us. They actually thought somebody was coming up behind us, like a truck or something, because it was moving fairly fast and very bright. It was just such as bright as blinding light. It was orange like a sunset, and it was just spanning across the road.
I got really scared, and I said to Grace, quick, just step on it. because I knew there was a town just a kilometre up the road.
As we got closer into the middle of this car parking area and looked up, we could see this ship. Well, that's what you'd have to call it, because it was, definitely not an aeroplane, and it was something from definitely not this world, that's for sure.
Sort of moved across from this direction straight over the top of us. It sort of disappeared into a gully where we lost sight of it.
We were scared for our safety. I mean, I've got to be honest, I think it's the first time in my life that I could identify of anybody telling me that they were scared they were going to die, because I was. When I got to the opening of the drive here, the other girls noticed that there was something else up, some activity up there in the sky. We were still scared. We didn't know what they were either. They seemed to be moving in a direction that this other craft had gone over and gone down.
So the first thing you think of, just pull off someone's driveway.
And as I pulled in, the light was so blinding, it actually was hurting our eyes to look at it. Then I noticed a figure coming. It wasn't a human. It definitely was no human, that's for sure. I felt threatened by it. I felt really, really threatened by it. That was the closest thing I've ever experienced, the thought of actually, coming close to death, I suppose, which sounds pretty silly, but the fear that I had was like that, like I wasn't going to see my family again. And the weird thing is that it's not the normal thing to talk about and for people to accept. But, it's been 3 years now, and I still feel very distressed by it.
I stopped the car. I looked over, and I saw this huge craft hanging over both sides of the road, just sitting there. And I was watching this thing. It was kind of a blunt silver gray. And I saw 6 beings coming near the car, coming toward me. They were gray, large black eyes. I was just stunned. I was panicked, and I was screaming inside my head because I wanted to get away, but I couldn't scream out loud. It was very frightening. I was terrified.
The most controversial testimonies come from the small number of witnesses to second and third kind encounters, which leave physical evidence or where actual contact with an extraterrestrial is claimed.
I suddenly felt a tightening sensation around my head. It was as if there was a band of something round there which was tightening, and I felt that I was going to faint. I thought that it would be wiser to faint inside the restaurant than outside, and I sat down and waited. It lasted about a minute. It went off and all was well. It was just as if nothing had happened, and I paid the bill and we left, and I completely forgot about that. At 5:15 in the afternoon, it was time to go home. When I arrived at Weedon Crossroads, I turned right onto the A5 and immediately saw a brilliant red light on the left-hand side above the road and a brilliant green light on the other side. My thoughts were that it was an aircraft which was going to zoom over my head and crash. But the other traffic went slowly. I went slowly at the same pace as them because it was a busy road. And I realised soon that these 2 lights were attached to a grey dumbbell-shaped object which was above the road. It's been estimated since that it was 50 feet wide and about 100 feet above the road. And I went along and of course had to drive underneath it. As I went along the road then towards Churchstowe, where I live, I could look back and I could see this was still there and the lights were flashing. The green light was still flashing and the red light was not. The next part of the road was covered with trees, and I remember driving under the trees. But when I came out from under the trees, well, I don't remember coming out from them, because suddenly the car was stationary. Everywhere was black, real pitch black, and I didn't know where I was. I knew I was in the car because my hands were on the steering wheel. I couldn't see the road, the trees, the buildings. I could see absolutely nothing, not even the car I was sitting in. And of course I sat there and wondered where I was. I wasn't afraid in any way at all, just wondered where I was. And suddenly a brilliant white circle of light about 1 metre across shone on the road to the side of the car, and it went off and everywhere was black again. And then another circle of white light, exactly the same as the one before, shone just towards the front of the car, and they went on and off in a circle round the front of the car. And then they went back in a semicircle round to where they started, on and off, and again in the same way to my side of the car, and this one shone in the garden of a cottage on the right-hand side. It was then as if it was turned and it went up the front of the cottage and off the top. I sat there thinking, these lights must have come from above because they were completely circular, but there were no beams, so but I couldn't see anything. I didn't know why they'd come, where they'd come from, or what. And as I sat thinking about this, suddenly I was about 30 yards further down the road, driving in third gear quite normally, as I had done, or had been doing, at the end of the trees. My journey had taken 30 minutes, and it should have taken 15. Somewhere along the line, presumably while I sat in the car, I'd lost 15 minutes of time.
4 women in a car at a village called Preston Capes, which is about 4 miles from Churchstowe, where Elsie lives, were driving to a meeting in Northampton when they also saw almost exactly the same thing that Elsie had seen about an hour and a half, 2 hours earlier. They described it as projecting beams of light down onto the car, and the car engine and its lights began to falter and fade. As is often the case in these experiences, there was a kind of blink in reality, and then the thing disappeared and the experience was over. I talked to the witnesses, or I tracked a couple of them down to see if they'd be prepared to explore this case further, because obviously there was a possibility that there was missing time here. They didn't remember whether there was, and that if we explored it under hypnosis, it was conceivable that we may have found deeper memories there. But they were absolutely against that. They did not want to explore this any further. They preferred to forget all about it, as many witnesses do, and just wish that it never happened to them. It was an incident in their lives that was something they did not want to think about.
I've called them ghost-like beings because I didn't know how to describe them in any other way. It was like a ghost with a head on the top and a kind of a body and tail. It seemed to come towards me and it seemed to go away, but it didn't change size. And then it was no longer there. And then a more rectangular shaped one came on the other side of the light. It was as if it was standing on one corner. And if you wanted to describe it as a person with a sheet over his head, I suppose you could say, well, there was the head and the other 2 corners could have been arms and this was the feet. But, and some people have described it as that. I don't think of it as that. I think of it as being another ghost-like shape.
This is where we see the large orange light.
That's right, yes, we did. Yes, on their left.
On the left here.
Yes. And
then it disappeared, and I am coming up to it now. It appeared again here. But right. It started hovering down below the back of these trees and the hedges here.
We came on down the road for another quarter of a mile, maybe a bit more. We turned sharp left to come into Chilcombe Lane. It's a bad bend, isn't it? Going down this lane, and we were doing about 20 miles an hour, maybe 20, 25 miles an hour. Done about 70 yards down, all of a sudden this car suddenly went crazy. It just leapt off the road to the right, and the engine started to rev. We hit the grass verge, which is a very wide grass verge, about 15 yards wide, and we were heading towards a high edge. So I grabbed the steering wheel as Mrs. Bowles was fighting with it, and suddenly the car straightened itself. We came down the grass verge for about 10 to 15 yards, and we came to a stop. And it was those we'd hit an invisible barrier, which it gave, because it didn't throw me forward into the seat, but it gave, and then brought us back to our normal stopping position.
That was when we see...
Well, then sorry, yes?
That was when we see, what I shall say, a cigar-shaped object hovering in front of us. Inside were 3 figures.
Yes, they had like a cockpit in the cabin was in the front of the cigar-shaped thing, and was lit up, but not glowingly lit up. It was a very easy light to look at.
It was hovering. It had either steam or vapor coming out like gas jets. Then I see one of these figures get out of this thing, this object, and it started walking across towards me.
Yes, it was.
Now, as it was walking across towards me, I heard a whistle.
Which I didn't hear.
So it's like a whistling kettle starting to whistle. Now, he had on like a boiler suit, but it was with a polar neck collar. He had a seam down on his right-hand side. As he walked across, he come to my window. He put his arm on the roof of my car and looked in. Now, he was a tall man, roughly 6'1", 6'2". He had pink eyes, which were very piercing. He had sideboards and a beard, which met. He looked in at me, then he looked at Ted. After looking at Ted, he looked at my dashboard. And as he was looking at the dashboard, my car engine started up. Now, the car ignition keys was turned off. And as the engine started up of my car, my headlights were 4 times powerful than what they normally are. It was just like a glow of white. I see a movement of this figure. Oh, by the way, I grabbed Ted. And I said, no, Ted, don't get out, because he wanted to get out. And I just literally wrapped my body around Ted. And then I opened one eye, because I'd had my eyes shut. And I opened one eye and I said, look out, Ted, he's going round the back to you. I see a movement, thinking he was going round the right, all the way round my car. Ted looked over his left-hand shoulder to have a look around to see if he was coming round. And my words were, don't open the door, Ted, don't open the door. But while Ted was looking round and me huddled to him with my eyes closed, the figure disappeared with the object. After it gone, after a few seconds, which seemed hours to us, Ted said, well, let's go. Oh, he asked me if he could drive, and I said, not likely. It only because it meant me getting out of my car. I put it in first and started off, but we could not move. It was as though we were still hitting an invisible barrier. Well, I put her back in neutral and waited for a few seconds, and then I started off again. And we went off perfectly normal in the car. On the Monday, when I got up, I had a rash on my face, down my neck, and along onto my shoulder.
Which side?
On the right-hand side. It was all like blotchy. It could have been a nerve rash, or it could have been where that gentleman was stood by my window. Incidentally, since this happening, I have had a telephone call from a person from London telling me on no account am I to say anything to anyone about this, what we've seen, because I should be having a government official come round to see me. And after all, this is England, and this is a free country, and I will speak and say what I want, which is the truth.
While driving home after visiting her son in the hospital, on the 5th of July 1972, she called at her mother's home for a cup of tea and a bit of a chat. And she left there about 9:15 p.m, taking the shortcut along the Muraduck home from Frankston. And that's the south side of Melbourne. I don't know how many of you know that area. It's quite an open area. It's sort of semi-country. And while driving home, on this occasion, she saw a blue light which came down over the car. And she thought it was the helicopter because they have a blue light that blinks on the underside of it. And thinking that the helicopter might have a message for her, she got out of the car and had a look at it. And she was really quite staggered because it was a huge object. It would have spanned the road, that's the macadam strip, plus the two side pieces on the road, which would have made it an extremely large saucer, which would be in about, the object was possibly, in her estimation, but 2 telephone poles high, and would have spanned the strip of road, which was 24 feet wide, also taking in the nature strips on the either side of the road, and making the saucer approximately 100 feet in diameter. Now, having already alighted from the car, she leaned back and took a long look at the object and wondered what it was that she was seeing. The object's surface was smooth, it had no joins or welds, seams or rivets, no windows or portholes, and no wheels. The huge object was radiating a brilliant light or blue light and an intense glow, and there was no movement, no wobbling, no rotating, but a faint humming could be heard. And she noted all these things while wondering what sort of aircraft it was before fear took over, at which time she quickly got back into the car and drove off as fast as she could, only to find the object was maintaining its speed just above and behind the car. No matter how fast she travelled, the object seemed to remain at the same distance. Aware that the blue light was no longer with her, and seeing a very bright light streak off in the opposite direction, Mrs. Putty realised that the chase must have been over. And it followed her for about 8 minutes, or 8 miles rather. She didn't go a mile a minute, but 8 miles. The witness reported her sighting to the police at Dramana, and some family members and also some friends who considered it all a bit of a joke. So she decided to do a little bit more about it, but not until about 3 weeks later. Then on the 25th of July, and that same year, after having visited her son again, he was there in the hospital for some time, she followed a similar route home, had a cup of tea with her mother, and left again about the same time, 9:15. She arrived at the Murdoch Road, travelled a short distance of about 1 mile when the blue light once again appeared before her. And she thought, oh no, not again. And this time I'm not going to stop. And she was hanging onto the steering wheel and nothing was going to move her from that car. And the car drifted to a stop on the side of the road. No matter what she did to the Holden car, it wouldn't reply to her demands. And she was wondering, where do I go from here? She was rather terrified and gripped the wheel and looked out the windscreen and saw the object hanging silently in the above the car, just in front of it and above the car. And the countryside was bathed in a blue light. Then a voice spoke to her. Not audibly, she said, but in her head, as if it was a thought put into the head. And as if words had been put into a computer and came out the other end in the most beautifully modulated and very well-spoken English. During this time, she experienced a most unusual sensation. She said if you could feel that you'd been in a vacuum, well, that was the impression that she got. It was perfectly still and perfectly quiet. And the message read, "Don't be afraid," as a pause. "We mean you no harm," another pause. "Your tests will be negative." And she'd already had some done and they were negative, but she thought they couldn't have been the ones. "Tell the media," and a longer pause, "and you are now in control." And at that moment the car started up again as if she had turned the key.
It was a starry July night in 1966 when a prominent Fort Wayne businessman and his 19-year-old son were on their way up to the family's Clear Lake cottage. They were driving on Road 120 just south of Clear Lake when each sensed something was hovering over their car.
It was about the size of a two-car garage, or 25 feet in diameter, and it was convex on both the top and the bottom. And it appeared to be in floodlights or all aglow.
The object seemed suspended in midair, about 15 feet above the tree line. It made no sound, and as the older man got out of the car to retrieve a camera from the trunk, the object moved back as if to observe him. Other cars approached and the object's lights dimmed. It swayed from side to side, tilted at an angle, and shot up into the heavens, gone in a matter of seconds.
There was a feeling of being kind of at peace with the world because we now understood that there were things far beyond those of mortals. Neither one of us are nutcases. It's something that's a very humbling experience, and you know, not everybody believes you, so you more or less keep quiet about it and just appreciate it.
The one reason, if any, that I would consent to be in this program is the fact that I want people to have an open mind, because there are spacecraft out there, and I think from other planets. Keep an open mind, you may see one someday.
The men's sighting has been recorded in this book, Flying Saucers Here and Now.
I was thrilled to death about it and felt that we were probably gifted, that God was very kind to us, that we were able to see a flying saucer, because how many people see something like this in a lifetime?
My husband and I were driving up to my girlfriend's place in Monbulk, which is in the Dandenong Mountains. We were driving on Belgrave-Hallam Road, and it was just on dusk. I saw what I thought was round orange lights in the field. It looked unusual to me.
Later that night, retracing their route home, Kelly noticed something else unusual.
It's about a kilometre or so in front of us, about twice the height of the treetops. We could see this object, which at first I thought was a blimp. It had the shape of a blimp, but it was light. As we got closer to it, the light seemed to sort of separate, and it was actually these a row of round lights, and they were orange. It appeared like there was silhouettes standing in these round orange circles, like people, but you could only see the black outline. Well, I just said to my husband, look, there's people in there. And the minute I said that, it shot off to the left of us. Within 1 or 2 seconds, it was gone completely. About a kilometre or two further down the road, as we kept driving, I came across at least what I thought was a screen or a wall of light across the road. And my heart started racing and the adrenaline was sort of pumping through my body, and I'm thinking, we've just seen this back down there. We're in for, you know, a close encounter. Then the next instant, nothing. We seem to have actually covered a fair distance that I don't even remember covering. It might have been possibly close to a kilometre that I don't remember actually travelling. There was no light. There was nothing blocking the road.
Kelly says it wasn't until weeks later she remembered actually getting out of the car that night.
And I saw that there was another car that had pulled up 100 metres down the road. Then I walked around the front of the car to where my husband was standing on the other side, and we started walking across the road together. As we were walking across the road, I looked down and I saw that the other people were getting out the car and starting to walk as well. So I was quite happy that there was other people there who were seeing the same thing that we were. And we walked up along here to where the fence is. Right out in front of us, there's this huge craft.
I was totally awestruck. You know, it was science fiction coming to life. There wasn't any fear then. It was just all total awe.
We stood here, I guess, side by side, my husband and I, for about 30 to 45 seconds. Then this tall, dark being just appeared in front of the craft, and he was followed by about another 7 or 8 that appeared straight behind him.
I felt this energy go through me. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before in my life. It was like some sort of low-level frequency that came in waves, but it was so dense that I could actually physically feel it going through my body. And that feeling absolutely terrified me. It was like, I can't even explain the horror that I felt just feeling this. And I began screaming. The minute I did, the eyes on these things lit up and they came charging across the field.
Halfway across, they split up into 2 groups. Some headed off down there and the rest came directly towards us. I felt this blow to my stomach, and the next thing you know, I'm back here somewhere on the grass. It literally lifted me off of my feet. And I thought I was going to die. I thought if I don't get up now, I'm going to pass out and I'm going to die. I'm not going to come back to consciousness, you know. So I pulled myself up into a sitting position, and when I sat up, I couldn't see anything. And it was like there was just black in front of my eyes.
As they were driving, Giorgio noticed a dark shape in the sky trailing them. He knew it could not be an aircraft or helicopter because he couldn't hear any engine noise.
I saw it very clearly. It was a bright ball of light that moved quickly toward us. As it approached, I started feeling drowsy. My eyelids became heavy, and I could not keep my eyes open.
The car began to slow down by itself, in spite of the fact that he was pressing down hard on the gas. The speedometer registered 10 miles per hour, and he was still losing speed. He pulled off to the side of the road and turned the engine off, when he noticed, on the side of the mountain ahead, a strange light formation rotating and spinning. Then an electrical cloud enveloped the car. The car was surrounded by hundreds of bolts of lightning striking simultaneously. The doctor and his wife were instantly transported through a time and space warp to a different country over 1,500 miles away. Not only were they in a different location, they seemed to be moving around in complete freedom. 1 minute they were driving, the next minute they were walking through a field. Then they were driving again, then they were inside an ancient city, roaming through the temples.
Ho avuto una netta sensazione fisica. I remember very strongly that it was a very physical experience. I remember exactly the smell of the sea and the wind on my skin. I don't think there are words to describe this kind of experience because I knew very well that I wasn't dreaming, and yet I could not possibly make sense of what was happening.
As in similar cases, the aim seems to be to confuse and disorient the witnesses, overwhelming and teasing them at the same time. And the experience is always elusive, just like in a dream.
From deep inside the temple, the intense light appeared again, floating in the air. The ball of light then wrapped around them in a scanning motion, and then suddenly they were sitting in their car in the hills of Turin again. Their watches and the clock in the car had stopped at 4 o'clock, the time when they first saw this light. Scared and confused about what they had just experienced, the couple decided to continue on to the wedding. When they arrived at the church, they realized that several hours had passed. Later that night, Dr. Tomasi and his wife paid a visit to a psychiatrist friend who conducted some tests.
Dr. Tomasi and his wife came to see me within the first 3 hours of the incident. I can verify that their cortisone level was around 60 micrograms per milliliter, which is 4 times the normal level. This indicates an unusually high stress situation.
The next day, the doctor returned to the spot where he pulled off the road and took some samples of the earth where the electrical activity had occurred.
The earth sample I have analyzed indicated that the area was exposed to temperatures of 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. The grass samples showed a substantial breakdown of the chlorophyll molecules with no residue of radiation.
I have a friend who is working in the physics section of the library, Northern Illinois University, and he wanted to show me the lightning bugs out over the cornfields and the stars in the sky. He thought it was the most beautiful sight, and we drove out down this farm road, and there are these fireflies, and it's incredible. And we're heading back towards town, and we're by this huge oak tree, and all of a sudden a large ball of white light with a 100-foot tail comes by soundlessly. He loses control of the Volkswagen that he's driving. We go into a ditch. The thing disappears about 3 feet above the ground in front of our car, and there's no sound, no nothing. We go back to town. We're not hurt. We thought for sure. This is about the time that the Kohoutek comet was supposed to be coming through. and which they had been reporting in the press, and we thought, well, maybe there's some connection to what we saw, and it'll be on the news that evening. We came back, there was no mention whatsoever of any large object appearing over the cornfields of DeKalb.
We were coming home late at night, my wife and myself and 3 of our children, and we had a terrible experience. They thought it was terrible. We were coming in a area that was not very populated, a wooded area off of the main highway coming home, and there was a light that kept following us. And later on, it came around in front of the car and was coming down in the road to land. And when my wife saw it, she just became hysterical. And my youngest daughter at that time, she was a baby. In fact, she graduated high school this year. She came along late in life. But anyway, she was quite young, and she was asleep, and it alarmed her, and she had awakened and was screaming. My wife was screaming. But this craft moved back up into the sky, and it moved around to our right and moved out into a field and came down and lit the entire area up and had a row of lights all the way around the craft. Well, we had stopped the car by that time, and I was trying to get out of the car. I knew it was my time to meet them. And before I could get out of the car, my wife was screaming, and my youngest son, and she held me and wouldn't let me out of the car. So then the voice came to me again, this is not the time. It'll be another time. And we left. My wife became so hysterical that we left, and I could see, looking back, that the craft was still there, hovering when we left. It was a lot larger craft than what Calvin and myself had seen.
We saw what we thought was a new star in the sky. And at that point, it began to move and went across the face of the moon. So we stopped the car to get out to look at it, because now we know it's not a star, it's possibly a satellite. Barney decides to get out with the binoculars and attempt to identify this craft. And he gets out. I stay in the car. He looks up at the craft, and he sees human-like figures standing behind the windows, looking down at him, and the craft began to descend. And he got the impression they were trying to capture him, trying to grab him. He ran back to the car. We were speeding down the highway to avoid capture. There was a series of beeping sounds. And then, for some unexplained reason, Barney left the main highway onto a secondary road, and we found ourselves next on a dirt road. Just before we got to the dirt road, we saw what we thought was the moon setting. And you could see the silhouette of trees in front of it. And then the dirt road, we could remember leaving the dirt road, finding our way back. And when we came into Ashland, back on the main highway, we heard the beeping sounds again, and we came home. There were 11 of these beings. They're for purposes of identification. We call one the leader, because he seemed to be in charge. And he was the one who spoke to us in English. Then there was the examiner who did the testing. And then there were what we call crew members, because they stayed outside in the corridor. There were 9 of them. Now, both Barney's and my exams basically were very much similar. They checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took samples of our hair, scraping of our skin, were very interested in our feet. And then with me, they put me on the table and tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel. He said it was a pregnancy test. And I said that was no pregnancy test, and it wasn't in those days. It was unheard of on this planet, particularly where Barney was closed-minded. This created quite a bit of emotional turmoil for him. And he began to having health problems, and anxieties, fluctuating blood pressure, stomach problems and all. And he wasn't responding to medication. So his doctor thought maybe Barney had some kind of emotional hang-up of some kind that was preventing him from getting back on his feet. So he sent Barney in to a psychiatrist who was in the same building he was in. And Barney started going to the psychiatrist on a regular basis, talking about his early childhood and all. And One time, Barney went in, and the psychiatrist said, asked Barney, well, what did you do this weekend? And Barney told him we went up in the mountains looking for this spot. So we began questioning Barney about this, and as a result, referred both Barney and me to Dr. Benjamin Simon.
Both of them then, 3 years later, were hypnotized by Dr. Benjamin Simon in Boston, and both had abduction scenarios, as we all know.
Like a glow on the outside.
The Del Duca case was investigated by Dr. Richard Sigismund, a social psychologist in Boulder, Colorado. Their story begins late one night while driving down a lonely stretch of highway on their way home from a trip with their 4-month-old son. All they can remember is seeing 4 UFOs. Only under deep hypnosis do they begin to fill in the lost hours.
4, 5, sleep.
Joe and Carol are each hypnotized separately, but relate similar stories.
Pulling into the woods.
You're pulling into where?
The woods.
What are you doing there?
We're going to the spaceship.
Going to a what?
The spaceship.
Tell me what you're doing then.
Going into the room.
It's a bright room. It's a bright room. What are you doing in this room, Joe?
Just laying there. In these rooms, Joe and Carol talk about undergoing some kind of physical examination.
They're looking at my feet.
They're looking at your feet, you said?
Yes. It's hurting me.
What'd you say, Carol? It's all right to tell me, Carol.
They're hurting my ankle.
They're doing what?
They pulled on my ankle. It feels like they broke it.
These people. Will you describe these people to me, Joe? Tell me what you see. Tell me what they're doing, if anything.
They got little ribs all up and down. They're real skinny at the waist, but they have a big chest. It's clear that Joe and Carol are reliving an intensely emotional experience, especially Joe, who describes an unusual meeting with one of the entities. He just pulled me out.
Pulled you out of what, Joe?
Out of my body. I'm one, but I'm two. He's so nice. He's warm. He likes me.
The stories on every significant, in fact, minor details, they match. Even though each individual had distinctly different type of experience, which they relived under the hypnosis. Nonetheless, if they were describing the shape of the so-called craft, or they're describing the suits of the entities, it all dovetailed to a minute degree. It would be a great difficulty if individuals sought to perpetrate a hoax, to maintain it under deep hypnosis.
Television producer, writer, and entertainer Elliot Novak and his then-fiancée performer Deborah Studer finished their show at Grossinger's Resort Hotel in the Catskill Mountains at 11 o'clock on August 23, 1984. Within minutes, they had packed their bags and props and were on their way back to New York City via Route 17 South, a trip that would ordinarily take them about 2 hours. Tonight, however, things didn't work as usual. Elliot looked up and saw a set of mysterious blinking lights. He pointed them out to Deborah, and she pulled over. The lights stopped blinking and began to move toward them. Only then did they see 3 separate lights located on the corners of a giant triangle, a dark metallic object. This illustration is Elliot's interpretation of what they saw.
It was so large that you couldn't see any sky if you looked left or right or back. It filled
your entire line of vision and peripheral vision.
It was like the size of a football field. That's the best way I could describe it.
The object moved over the car without making a sound and suddenly stopped, bathing them with an intense bluish-white light.
I remember at one point seeing a flash of light and then nothing.
I do remember the feeling of butterflies in my stomach and as if you were in a small plane that was going up and down and changing altitude.
The next thing they remember, the object was gone. The passenger door was open and Elliot's legs were hanging out. But there was something even more puzzling.
I raised myself up and closed my pants up. I had no idea what was going on, why my pants were down, what I was doing with my legs out of the car, why Debbie didn't say to me, "What are you doing with your legs out of the car with your pants down?" Nothing. We said nothing to each other. We just drove on.
They arrived back in New York City about an hour and a half later than usual. In the morning, Elliot woke up feeling a strange soreness in his groin.
The aftermath the next morning of being sore down there and having bruising on my thighs and on my legs and on my groin, and I urinated blood that morning for the only time in my life, the only time this ever happened to me.
Oddly enough, an article in the New York Times the next day provided details of similar UFO sightings reported over a period of months by thousands of residents in the Hudson Valley. Accounts of a gigantic triangle with lights in the summer skies.
Both Karen and I remembered the night of this incident that as we were driving around the lake, which is exactly a 4-mile radius, doesn't take very long to cover it all, that at one point we looked up and the moon was directly in line with the rearview mirror of the car. And by the time we got back to the lake, which shouldn't have been very long, the moon was setting.
It never occurred to me until that moment that there could possibly be some missing time involved. I felt sick. I literally felt nauseated at the thought of it.
But what happened during that missing time? Dennis asked Karen if she would consider hypnotherapy as a way to find the answer.
I think that the nature of a repressed memory is that there is no conscious access to this memory. It's not something that somebody remembers once or occasionally and then sticks back in a locked vault someplace in their mind.
Dr. David Clayton agreed to hypnotize Karen. He had no faith in the abduction experience, but as he worked with Karen, he realized that she was not unlike other patients who he'd seen relive past trauma under hypnosis.
Karen was recalling a very intense white light that approached the vehicle that she and her former husband were in at the time. And when this white light approached the side of the vehicle, it was so intense, I think Karen, at that point, felt that she had fainted.
Under Dr. Clayton's watchful eye, Karen revealed traumatic contact with extraterrestrial beings, something Dennis couldn't or wouldn't recall. But their descriptions of the craft were nearly identical.
We compared notes later. They corroborated very closely with some of the points that Karen had brought up under hers. We both got these images of a grid-like pattern, almost a primitive type structure, almost like a dirigible or something.
Independently, Karen and Dennis insisted that the purpose of the abduction was not to hurt them, but to help all humankind. They each felt compelled to deliver the same message. The fate of Earth is intertwined with alien worlds throughout the cosmos, and Earthlings are not doing a good job of taking care of our part of the universe. It's a message that Abduction Support Group leader Mary Kerfoot hears a lot.
As far as the phenomenon in general, some people's experiences can truly be described as abductions. They are taken kicking and screaming, struggling against their will. Others evolve over time as they understand what is happening to come very cooperatively and become associated with the beings that they're working with in a participatory role.
The Chicago Center for Encounters support group was formed in 1993, so abductees and experiencers would know that they are not alone.
It's enormously exciting for the members of our support group to compare experiences, because as soon as you find someone who has some aspect that is similar or exactly like yours, you feel much more validated.
At first, Abductees were pariahs, oddballs, inventing a new mythology. But after 3 decades, the phenomenon is not going away because, abductees insist, alien contact is a reality.
If you feel that this has happened to you, by all means, do whatever it takes to uncover the information because it's worth the risk.